Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are here to do a little book review. This is going to be a little bit different than I would normally do. I've just finished the book, literally 20 minutes ago. And normally I would usually wait at least a full day before I do a review. But I'm kind of in a time crunch. This video should be going up on Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving, happy Turkey Day, guys. I hope you have an awesome, awesome holiday. So I don't really have time to film a well thought out review before this holiday though. And I really want to talk about this book. So this is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. It's the first thing I've ever read by Caitlin Starling. She's got a big book that she wrote that people really like, The Luminous Dead. This was marketed to me as a horror gothic. A lot of chatter about this book. Let me read the inside cover for you guys very, very quickly before I go into this. So it says, practical, unassuming Jane Shorenfield has done the calculations and decided that the most secure path forward is this: a husband in a marriage of convenience who will allow her to remain independent and occupied with meaningful work. Her first choice, the dashing but reclusive Dr. Augustine Lawrence, agrees to her proposal with only one condition: that she must never visit Lindridge Hall, his crumbling family manor outside of town. Yet on their wedding night, an accident strands her at his door in a pitch-black rainstorm, and she finds him changed. Gone is the bold, courageous surgeon, and in his place is a terrified, paranoid man, one who cannot tell reality from nightmare, and fears Jane is an apparition, come to haunt him. By morning, Augustine is himself again, but Jane knows something is deeply wrong at Lindridge Hall, and with a man she is so hastily bound her safety to. In The Death of Jane Lawrence, Caitlin Starling crafts a new kind of gothic horror from the bones of the beloved canon. Set in a dark mirror version of post-war England, this Crimson Peak-inspired story assembles, then upends every expectation set in place by Shirley Jackson and Rebecca, and will leave readers shaken, desperate to begin again as soon as they are finished. Ooh, that last line really gets me. Alright, let's debunk a couple things. One, this is nothing like Crimson Peak. Absolutely nothing, apart from the fact that woman marries man she doesn't know much about and moves into his old dilapidated manor. That's it. It's the beginning and end of Crimson Peak being similar. Rebecca. No, literally nothing Rebecca-ish. Apart from maybe the fact that there is a Rebecca-like character in this, who you can see maybe was inspired by the character Rebecca in the novel Rebecca. But no, that's kind of it. And Shirley Jackson. I would not consider this book anything like anything Shirley Jackson has ever written, but I will say that Caitlin Starling definitely watched Mike Flanagan's Haunting of Hill House before she wrote this. There's a moment, if you read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where I read it and I was like, wow, you really ripped off Mike Flanagan. And had I not seen the Haunting of Hill House TV show, I don't think I would have figured out what was going on, but because I did, I figured out what was going on in this novel pretty quickly. That's a misleading sentence. I don't actually know what the hell happened in this novel. Kind of like Nothing But Blackened Teeth, except this was so filled with words that it was really hard to follow what was happening and when and to who, and there's kind of like doppelgangers and copycats and ghosts that might not be ghosts and might actually, whatever. I don't want to ruin anything. This was a 2-star read for me. I really wish I had all of the hours I spent reading this back. And it's unfortunate because it started out really good. I really liked the first third of this novel. I thought it was very gothic, very well written, very intriguing. I liked the premise quite a lot. And I really thought that this story was going to be kind of Jekyll and Hyde. I really thought that Jane was going to marry this man and then find out that he was like Mr. Hyde, right, by night, and like Jekyll by day. I was 100,000% off. And then it kind of turned almost into like this steampunk mess rather than like a traditional Gothic Victorian story. And I think one of the biggest issues I have with this novel is it's definitely set in like an alternate universe. It's not really Great Britain, it's Great Bretagne, and like Russia is like Ruzga or something like that. And like Camhurst is London, I'm assuming. Like, it's just very loosely based off of Britain, and I had a really hard time trying to figure out if it was supposed to be set, like, post World War I, World War II, or the Victorian era, because they have the war fighting capabilities and technology of World War I, to an extent World War II with like bombs and gas masks and all of that stuff. But their knowledge of like science is very like mid 1800s, maybe late 1800s. And I found that very, very, very strange and off-putting. Kind of the way that like women are treated or expected to be treated in this novel kind of teeters on like very modern or very, very Victorian. Some characters are female doctors who are very successful, where others are expected to marry someone before they can even think about ever moving to a different town. Like, there's just so much, it's so hard to understand the society and the world and the history of the world that this novel is set in, that I really wish that Caitlin Starling had just set it at a real time in history, in a real place in history, because she didn't do enough world building or historical background of this world for me to understand anything about it. Like, at all. At all. I didn't understand the social norms. I didn't understand the history. I didn't understand why people were the way they were, or why they were acting the way they were in certain situations. I just found it all very, very odd and very, very strange. And it just kind of got worse from there. It kind of threw the concept of Victorian Gothic out of the window and said, I'm going to make a magic-inspired steampunk story. There is absolutely nothing about this novel that is horror. When you get to the end and you're trying to figure out, like you could argue, like, yeah, there's ghosts, but they kind of science away ghosts as well in the story, which pissed me off. There is just nothing about this novel that makes it a horror, and it's not well built up enough to be a fantasy story. And I think this is like, everything just ends up being like, this whole novel is based off of a marriage of convenience, but the way the novel was written was literally just the author was throwing in the situations and characters of convenience to further her really weird, strange, elusive plot that she had going on. But the pivotal point of the story is that Jane marries Dr. Lawrence because she needs a marriage of convenience. She marries him after like knowing him for like 4 days, and the whole story takes place over the course of 2 weeks. Caitlin Starling obviously forgets that, because at one point she's literally like, and it's been weeks since this, and earlier in the novel we know that it had only been like 9 days. So even she got lost in her writing, which I found very, very problematic. But I'm really sorry. If I had married a man and I had only known him for like a week, and then I found out that he was potentially crazy and was lying to me left and right, I would have absolutely no attachment or concern for him whatsoever. And all of this story is based on the fact that pretty much because he was really nice to Jane and made her feel smart, and then they slept together, that she's literally head over heels in love with this man and connected to him forever, until the end when we realize, oh, you've actually got a lot of issues with this dude, but none of that seemed to be an issue until literally the last, I don't know, 15 pages. Like, this woman is risking her life for a man that she's known for a week, and then we find out at the end really doesn't give a shit about him. And ain't that a love story? That alone I had so many issues with, but I'm just gonna leave it at that, because if I go too in depth, I will ruin a lot of the story. And though I don't recommend this book, I don't want to discourage anybody from reading it, because I know a lot of people did really, really like this book. This just was not a me book. This book was all over the place. Faulty world building, weird character motivations. I wasn't invested in anybody or anything. A lot of situations created out of convenience. But what bothered me the most, the absolute most about this book is, and it goes back to me talking about my own suspension of disbelief, which I had an issue with The Witching Hour. If you're going to tell me that magic exists, and you're going to tell me that there's all of these parameters to how magic exists and how it's years of practice and honing your skill to get magic to work the way that you want. Follow those rules. Make those rules known to the reader. And don't introduce a character who knows what magic is for about a day and have them literally become like a grand sorcerer of magical ingenuity. And that drove me insane. Insane. The magic, I did not understand how it worked. It was never fleshed out. It was never explained. And it kind of was just like, if you think this will happen, this could happen. But there's all these people who've studied this for years and years and years and years, and they don't even have an understanding of it. And then you kind of find out that, like, I'm not really sure how this is connected, but like magic is based on like the theory of zero. And because our main character is like a mathematician, she's like, haha, I've got it, 0. And it was just like infuriating because the math used to explain how magic works in this is like the math that you learn in like your fucking, your 9th grade freshman year of high school geometry class. Like a circle is infinite. Like, that was the secret. That's not really a spoiler because they, even though that's the answer, they like kind of just brush over it as if, yeah, of course, like how come nobody else figured? Like, oh my god. And they keep dropping like these fake mathematical concepts into the story to try and explain why this like equation or theory, like the Pythagorean theorem, I think comes in at one point, like is the reason that like you can open a door in a wall. Like, oh my god, it was just so bad. And it was like, again, like 9th grade math being used as if it was this like crazy high level, like genius theory to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. And I was just like, oh my god, this is such lazy writing. Like, Caitlin Starling wanted you to think that she was very intelligent when writing this. And I'm not saying that she's not intelligent, but I don't like when an author wants the reader to like see like, look, I'm using mathematical equations to explain magic. Like, look at me. I kind of hate that vibe. I'd much rather you tell a story that like implies certain things or like actually uses equations that make sense and doesn't just make everything like a moment of convenience. Which is what Caitlin Starling did, and it just drove me absolutely bonkers. And I couldn't get behind it. I couldn't get behind it at all. And in no world is somebody who's like good at like doing, in no world is there somebody who is like really good at keeping finances for somebody who's never been in an operating room in their entire life going to end up in an operating room and basically, like in the course of 20 minutes become a very highly regarded surgeon's assistant because she was able to do like one thing well without like feigning. Like and everything was like, well, she's really good at accounting, so that means you're a surgeon? Like, make that make sense. Make that make sense. This book was so all over the place, and I can't tell you what happened at the end. Like, I think I have a pretty decent understanding of what may have happened, but there were so many words and concepts thrown at me all at once, like piled on top of each other, and like, I'm not sure who's dead, I'm not sure who's alive, I'm not sure who is real, who is fake, what's part of the imagination. Like, none of that was explained, but I don't care because I wasn't invested in the story enough to actually like really want to determine what happened. A lot of information was just thrown at me very, very willy-nilly. Again, like I said, the motivations of our main characters made 0 sense to me. They were not fleshed out. The world that all of this was set in made no sense to me because it was not fleshed out. And it just kind of felt like Caitlin Starling was making everything up as she was going along. And I know I read the back of the book, like her afterward, where she talked about the fact that she'd written the book over the course of 5 years and it had many different, like reiterations of it. Like she had gone back and revised it a lot. And you can really tell that this is like 3 different novels because it starts off very traditional Gothic, kind of gets weird steampunky, and then turns into like magical, mathematical I don't really know what's going on world. Like, it really goes from like 0 to 60 and then 60 to like 5,000. And I just didn't get it. I don't know. Maybe I'm like really, really missing something. I think there's a metaphor in there somewhere, but I'd really be hard pressed to tell you what exactly it is. I don't know. Also, if a man gives you a wedding ring and it's the bone growths of a dead person, maybe say no? I don't know. It kind of sounded at the beginning like she had a lot of men she could have chosen from, and she really just picked the first thing that came to her. So yeah, I really hated this book. I really, really hated this book. And there was just really bad prose in it. Like, I posted some of the prose on my Instagram stories because I was just like stunned. But there's literally a line where she's like, a door is simpler than a book. As if she's like conjured this like theory out of like years of practice. Like, and it's a pivotal plot point that a door is simpler than a book. And I'm just like, I just read like 40 pages to come to that conclusion. It was just, oh, it was rough. It was rough. And I don't understand it. Like, there's so many things about like the magic in this novel and like the way spells work and like reanimation that just wasn't explained, and it wasn't fleshed out, and it just followed different rules as it went along. And I couldn't get behind it. The prose in this book really was trying sometimes. And there was like a lot of plot points that were just kind of thrown in like towards the end. Like, at the very beginning of the book, we kind of hear about like the fact that Jane is an orphan, and then like out of nowhere for like maybe 3 pages, like the death of her mother is significant. It was like, why? Where did this come from? Why is this here? I don't know. I could go on and rant about how much I disliked this book. But I'm just going to leave it at that. This was a huge disappointment to me. It really just, it wanted to be way too many things all at once and didn't execute the things that it was good at well enough because it wanted to throw so much stuff in there in the end. It wanted to be a gothic romance. It wanted to be a gothic horror story. It wanted to be a steampunk universe. It wanted to be a fantasy novel. It wanted to be this magical world, almost like Harry Potter-esque, except in Harry Potter the magic makes sense, and this just, none of it made sense. And then you get to the ending, and it's one of those endings where it's like, well, what actually happened? And you don't have any answers, but not in like the good way, not in like the turn of the screw good way, where it's like thought-provoking, and you're like, haha, oh my god, it can mean so many things. This, you're just kind of like, I just don't understand. I just don't get it. I didn't get this book. I know there was so much hype about it. It is a beautiful cover. I will say that. It is a beautiful cover. There's that wedding ring right there. Skull ring. That was kind of cool. Bone ring, whatever. But that was it. I really disliked everything else about this, and I just don't understand what was happening or why. But yeah, there you have it. Again, if you guys enjoyed this book, power to you. I think there was definitely a level of knowledge that went over my head in this. I think it was trying really hard to be just more intelligent than it was. There's definitely a level of like art house fantasy things going on there. So if you enjoyed it, I'm very happy that you enjoyed it, but I did not. Again, 2-star read from me. Definitely, this month has been bad. I've had some clunkers this month, but we will leave it at that. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. If you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. And happy Thanksgiving, y'all. I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.